Hi guys, welcome to the Guitar Summit, welcome to my workshop. I suppose you guys all know my name is Tom Quayle, because you've arrived and you've seen the programme. For anybody who doesn't know me, I'm going to do this for the word jazz here, but mostly fusion-based guitar player from Leeds in the UK. This is my second time at the Guitar Summit. And my job here today is to talk to you about fretboard visualization. I think I have quite a unique approach to this that's based on the culmination of quite a few influences over the years, including my jazz kind of learning, and also some influence particularly from a great guitar player called Wayne Krantz. Any Wayne Krantz fans in the room? Yeah. Check out his Improviser's OS book. It's the weirdest guitar book in the world, but it's absolutely fantastic. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about fretboard visualization, give you this unique approach. Some of you might have come across this before from me, possibly, or maybe it's disseminated a little bit now. But before we do that, I'm just going to warm up a little bit by just jamming to a backing track. And I apologise profusely for the number of notes I'm about to play. Just warning, there's going to be a lot of notes played. And then we'll get straight into it, because we only have 45 minutes, and it's quite an in-depth topic, so I'm going to try and rattle through it. I do have, if anybody kind of finds this topic useful, I've only got 5 of these left because I sold out of them all while I was in Asia before COVID, and obviously haven't done anything since and haven't got any more of them made. But I do have with me this visualizing the fretboard tutorial, which is a video tutorial which is about 6 hours long, and it's available to purchase on the side for a special price. So if you see my friend Daniel at the end, he will sort you out there if you're interested. But for now, I'll stick this backing track on and just jam over this just to warm up, so I hope you enjoy at least some of this multitude of notes that I am about to play. straight into this because this is quite a big topic. This instrument is a bit of a conundrum for a lot of people. It's quite a complex instrument to kind of think about and visualize. There's this cliche that guitar players have that I hear all the time, and I'm sure you've heard too, which is, I'm stuck in the box, I can only play the minor pentatonic scale, I'm just stuck playing the same things all the time. And especially when chord changes happen, when you're not in a single key, or when there's a weird chord somewhere that just doesn't fit, and you're like, how do I play over this chord? You find yourself as a guitar player moving around the fretboard in a really awkward way, finding it very difficult to kind of thread ideas through the fretboard or through chord changes. And this is because the visualization systems that we tend to use on the guitar, things like 3-note per string, the cage system, for example, really good, really useful. I learned all these things, but they rely on large pieces of information. Now, when I say large pieces of information, what I mean is, like the cage system, often will rely on scale shapes that take up all 6 strings, or 5 strings at a minimum. The 3-note per string system, where we're literally playing 3 notes on each string, might take up 6 strings as well. So if I was going to play a real basic C major scale, you'd end up with a really large shape like this. Now there's a lot of notes going on there, and we're covering more than 2 octaves of the scale, and it makes this very large pattern. And large patterns are hard to manipulate in real time. And when you improvise, you need to manipulate the notes on the fretboard in real time. Large chunks of information are hard for the brain to digest and break into smaller chunks of information. So my goal today is to give you a visualization system which relies on the smallest bits of information that you can manipulate in real time. Because your brains, and my brain, mine definitely, finds it much easier to think about the smallest bits of information possible and then combine those into larger chunks over time as I practice through this system of visualization. So, there's one thing I have to do before I talk to you about the system, which is tell you about my tuning. Does anyone know about this silly tuning?
Yeah.
Some of you guys do. I don't tune in standard tuning. In fact, I tune 4/6 of standard tuning, or 2/3 of standard tuning, because I have an E, an A, a D, a G, and then instead of a B, I have a C, and then instead of an E, I have an F. So my guitar is tuned in all 4ths, like a 6-string bass. And the reason for doing this, and this will become really clear later on, is because on the guitar, think about when you learn a chord voicing. Let's say you learn your basic, I say basic, some of you guys maybe don't know these chords, maybe you're just kind of beginners on bar chords and stuff, but your basic C major 7 chord. Okay, if I play this chord shape, you might recognize it. It's going to sound horrible, because the chord shape looks like this for me in my tuning. The thing is, if you take that chord voicing, which is on the middle 4 strings, so on the A, D, G, and B strings, in standard tuning, and you move all of those notes to the next octave on the highest 4 strings, you guys have to change your chord shape because of the tuning of the guitar, because you have a major third between your G and your B string. So you have to play, I think it's this shape. I don't play in standard tuning. I haven't played in standard tuning since 1999. For me, the chord shape is exactly the same. On the lowest 4 strings, the chord shape is exactly the same. Now this is going to come in super useful shortly, okay? So just to be aware of that. If you see me playing something and you think that doesn't look right, but it sounds correct, that's why you're not going crazy. It's a different tuning. So, let's start really, really basic. Let's take the major scale. So we can refer to scales, in this case the major scale. We'll do C major, the white notes on the piano, in 2 ways. Either in a specific way, using the note names in that scale, or a generic way, using the numbers, a numbering system, where we number each of the notes from 1 to 7, because there's 7 notes in the scale. So for C major, obviously the notation, or the note-based way of referring to that scale would be C, D, E, F, G, A, and B. And that is specific to that scale. That's a great way of thinking about that scale, and you should know what notes are in every scale that you play, okay? However, we play specifically fretted stringed instruments, have a very visual-based instrument. This is a highly visual instrument, and you should use that to your advantage. Especially if, like me, you're not somebody who's got amazing natural ears, that you can just hear everything like perfect pitch or amazing relative pitch. My relative pitch is reasonable, but it's not insane. So I have to use the visual nature of the guitar to help me out when my ears fail me. So, that numbering system, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. I can play any major scale on the guitar using any fingering. Let's not worry about the fingerings or which one I'm playing. And I can refer to it in that generic way. So here's C major, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, back to 1. Now we all know that sound. If you don't have perfect pitch, you don't need to know what the root note is. It doesn't matter. You still know that's a major scale. That's the relative nature of our hearing. If I moved to another key and I did this, everyone in the room is now in major land again, but now we've shifted key. We happen to be in E flat, but the really cool thing is the relative nature of those intervals, the distance between them from the root note, stays the same relative to the new root note. So again, we've got this generic 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. New root note, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. Now here's the cool bit, and again, a lot of you guys will be familiar with this. The major scale is the blueprint. Hopefully that word is you guys are clear what I mean by that. If not, I'll explain it. Feel free at any point, by the way, to raise your hand and ask a question for any of this stuff. I really want you guys to understand this. So the major scale is a blueprint from which we describe every other scale. So what I mean by that is, let's say we take the Dorian scale. Okay, you don't need to know any of these scales. Just follow along. If you know the scale, that's awesome. The Dorian scale is different to the major scale by only 2 notes. And we use that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 formula, as we call it, for the major scale, and we describe the Dorian scale by how it differs from the major scale. So we flatten the third. Now, for anybody who doesn't know, just to keep everybody on the same page, flattening on the guitar, when you flatten an interval, you lower it down by 1 fret. If you sharpen an interval, you raise it by 1 fret. So Dorian, flat the third and flatten the 7th. So that formula for that scale is 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7. Okay, back to 1 again. So again, if C was my root note, here's C major, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, back to 1. So let's flatten the third and the 7th. So 1, 2, flat 3, back a fret. Immediately we're out of major land because we've now got this minor third or flattened third. 4, 5, 6, flat 7, back to 1. One of my favourite sounds in the world. I think it's amazing. Every other scale can be described in this way. So let's pick something really weird. Let's pick the Lydian dominant scale. Don't need to know what it is. Don't worry about it. If you don't know, don't panic, don't leave, don't have a heart attack. It's totally cool. The Lydian dominant scale is 1, 2, 3, sharp 4, 5, 6, 7, flat 7, sorry. See, I'm getting confused now. So 1, 2, 3, sharpen the 4. Anybody who's used to the sound of Lydian will recognise that interval straight away. 5, 6, flat 7, 1. Here's the chord. Awesome sound. Okay, all making sense so far? You can see a couple of nodding people. Okay, so think about this. Normally on the guitar, if I was going to teach you guys the Dorian scale, or the major scale, or the Lydian dominant scale, what we would do is you would learn a fingering for it, the whole scale. And you would go away and you would practice that fingering, or position, sometimes it's called. And then what you would do is when you'd nailed that position, you'd learn the next position of the scale. Then the next position, and then the next position, until you've covered the fretboard. And in the case of a 7-note scale, all of the scales we've been looking at so far have 7 notes in them. You would have to learn 7 different positions for that scale. and they'd be specific to that root note, okay? So C, Lydian dominant, would have 7 different positions that were specific to that scale you would have to memorize. And then you'd have to do that if you wanted to learn all your scales for 7 modes of the major scale, 7 modes of melodic minor, 7 modes of harmonic minor. If you're really fancy, you'd learn your 7 modes of harmonic major. You'd have to do the diminished scale. There'd be all of these different scales, your pentatonic scale. I would imagine a lot of people in this room have done this with the minor pentatonic scale, learned 5 different positions. There is another way, and I want to show you what this is now. Let's take one interval, okay? Remember from the Dorian scale, we had a flattened third, this flat 3. I call these numbers in these formulas, I call them, this is a term I've coined, I call them intervallic functions. Because they're intervals, distances, but the note functions in a certain way in that scale or in that key. So the flattened third has a particular function against the root note. It's actually what makes it sound minor, if we're in a minor sound. So if you've got a minor chord or a minor scale of some description, the flattened third is the bit that makes it sound minor. So it functions in a certain way. Same with the fifth, same with the 7, whichever. Now, on the guitar, each of these intervallic functions, a 2, a 5, a 4, a 6, a 7, a flat 7, a sharp 4. There's a limited number of them. It's not that many, okay, within 1 octave. They make very specific visual shapes on the guitar that you can memorize. And you'll know some of them already. So, let's take that flat 3. And let's go for our old friend A minor pentatonic, this standard. Don't be thrown off by the weird shape that it makes on my guitar, it looks a little different. So the first thing we need to know is we've got an A root note. So without a doubt, you need to know where your note names are on the guitar. On any instrument, you need to know where your note names are. Okay, so I'm going to take this A here at the 5th fret of the E string. So the flat 3 looks like this on the guitar. On the single string, we've got A going to C. So what I just did there is the specific version. I named the notes A and C. Well, let's think about it generically. A is 1 and C is flat 3, so let's label it that way, 1 to flat 3. Now on the guitar, 1 to flat 3 looks like this. You've all played that before. 1, flat 3. Look at the shape it makes. The flat 3 is 3 frets higher than the root note. Let's take another A, anywhere on the fretboard. Here's another A, an octave higher. 1 and flat 3. Exactly the same tiny bit of information still works. This doesn't seem powerful yet, but it really is. 1 to flat 3. Find another A. 1, flat 3. 1, flat 3. 1, flat 3. I can't resist just slightly bending it for some reason. So that is one way of playing 1 to flat 3, and I memorize it. It goes in, and that's it. I now know how to play 1 and flat 3. Okay, let's look at another way of playing 1 and flat 3. Here's the same root note, A, but this time I'm going to play the flat 3 on an adjacent string, the next one up. In this case, the A string. So it's 1, and there's the flat 3. And again, memorize the physical, visual shape that it makes on the instrument. 1 to flat 3. So in this case, it's up a string and back 2 frets. If you want to be descriptive about it like that, to memorize it, that's great. If you want to do a dot diagram, the old classic guitar thing, to memorize it, that's cool too. I just keep it in my head, and I spend some time memorizing that shape. So now we've got 1, flat 3, ascending. 1, flat 3, ascending. All within 1 octave. So anywhere I place my finger on an A, now I have 2 ways of visualizing 1 to flat 3. 1, flat 3, 1, flat 3. 1, flat 3, 1, flat 3, 1. Now this one, I can't play the other shape because I've run out of strings. If you've got some weird fancy 8-string guitar and you happen to have a high, I don't think anyone does that, they're all lower, but you get the idea. Okay, so now I have 2 ascending ways within 1 octave of playing a flat 3. So here's why this is cool. That intervallic function shape that we've just learned is contained within the Dorian scale, the Phrygian scale, the Aeolian scale, the Locrian scale, the harmonic minor scale, the melodic minor scale, the diminished scale. It's contained within a minor arpeggio, -7 arpeggio, -7 flat 5, you get the idea. All of these things contain that piece of information that's now isolated in your mind, okay? So, let's do this for another interval, okay? Actually, before we do that, let me talk about something else. We've done this ascending 1 to flat 3. Well, it's really useful to do the same thing descending within 1 octave. So let's take this A, and let's find the flat 3 going down from 1 to flat 3, the function in the key. So that would be A going down to C, if we're specific, but in our generic case, we're just memorizing the shape, thinking 1 to flat 3. So here's 1, and I can go down to the flat 3. Okay, here's 1, down to flat 3 another way. So now I have 4 ways within 1 octave of playing a 1 and a flat 3. And that's it, there aren't any more ways. There's only 4 ways you can do it within 1 octave. And it's contained within all of those different harmonic scenarios that I listed, plus a bunch of others that I didn't list, okay? Now imagine you did that for every single interval possible, and there aren't that many. There's way less than you think. So for example, in our minor pentatonic scale, we have a 1, a flat 3, a 4, that's the same as the major scale, a 5, and a flat 7, okay? So, the 4, let's do that one next. We know our 1 and flat 3. Doesn't matter what the root note is, let's pick a different key. Let's do F sharp minor pentatonic. Well, we find our F sharp, here it is. Okay, so here's our sound. There's the box way of doing it. Here's our 1. Same information applies. 1, flat 3. 1, flat 3. 1, flat 3. 1, flat 3. 1 down to flat 3. Or 1 down to flat 3. I'm not worrying about what the flat 3's note name is. I know what it is, and you should too, but I don't think about that when I'm improvising. I just think about the visual relationship generically. So now let's do the 4. So here's 1. Well, I've learnt that the 4 looks like that. So that's our interval. If you've got good ears, you'll be able to hear that's a 4th. So the 4th interval, in this case, is up a string, but the same fret. Very basic visual representation. If I want to descend to the 4, it looks like that, within 1 octave, or, so I've learned that visual relationship between 1 and 4. I've done the same thing with 5, 1 to 5, 1, down to 5, 1, 5, 1, 5, 1, 5, 1, 5. Now, I'm slightly cheating because of my tuning. Because in standard tuning, those little shapes, there's I call them 2-point geometric shapes. The root note, and what does the other interval look like, ascending and descending within 1 octave from that root note. It's a 2-point geometric shape on the fretboard. In standard tuning, you have to modify them slightly for the tuning. But you've been doing that ever since you started playing guitar, because you've learned chord voicings specific to the strings that you're playing on. But in this case, you're learning very small bits of information, and it's a finite amount of information. It's not that much information. Okay, so let's say you did this for the minor pentatonic scale. Let's go back to A. Now on the guitar, as opposed to having to learn those big boxes and try and manipulate those in real time, let's say I take this A as my visualization reference point, A. I can now see from this A the flat 7. Don't worry about what note it is. I know it's a G. I don't think that in my head. I just see it on the fretboard as a shape, a 2-point geometric shape. 1 to flat 7. That would be there for you guys in standard tuning. 1 down to flat 7. I can see the 5. 1 down to 5. I can see the 4. I can't get down to the 4 I can only do one shape. Then I've got the flat 3. So when I'm improvising with any given scale, let's say the minor pentatonic scale, that's how my brain is working. I'm not thinking about these big shapes because they're hard to manipulate. And they're hard to think, okay, now I'm playing the 3rd, now I'm playing the 5th, now I'm playing the 7th. Because you're just playing a large shape. You're just stuck in that large shape. In this instance, over a lot of time, this is not a shortcut, it's not snake oil, it's not something that's going to, like, hi guys, we're 5 minutes in and suddenly you're all amazing guitar players and you can visualize the entire fretboard. That's not what this is. This is still a lot of work, but it's a finite amount of information that you need to learn. And in this case, when I'm visualizing the fretboard, I'm thinking 1, flat 3, 4, 5, 1, flat 7, 1, flat 3, 5, flat 7, 1, so on and so forth. And I'm updating my visualization reference point, my A, as I move around the fretboard. Now at first, this seems like that's a lot of stuff to keep track of. But if you practice it slowly like anything else, it starts to become subconscious like talking. It's not something you have to keep track of, you just can keep thinking about it and it's just there, basically. Does that make sense, that system? What's happening? So, the cool thing about this is, if you wanted to play a scale that you'd never played before, and you know its formula, so let's say, there's a cool scale called the Dorian flat 2 scale. Does anyone remember the Dorian formula? What was the Dorian formula? Is anyone brave enough to shout out? Nobody's brave enough. Flat 3 and flat 7. So what do we think the Dorian flat 2 scale might be? Music is very simple. It's not complicated. It's complicated to do, but the understanding is not that complicated. So if I was going to play a Dorian flat 2, first thing I need to know is the root note, then I need to know the formula of the scale. Which intervallic functions or intervals are in this scale? So it's 1, flat 2, flat 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7. Okay? You don't need to memorize it. In this instance, because I know what all of those intervals look like on the fretboard within one octave, ascending and descending from that root note, I can see the scale all over the fretboard without having to learn any fingerings, because I just know where those intervals are from the root note. So if this is 1, I know the flat 2 is here, or here, jaws. I know the flat 3 is here, we did this one. I know the 4 is here. I can't descend to the 4 because I don't have enough guitar. I know the 5 is here. I know the 6, the flat 7, and then the 1. So as I'm kind of moving through this scale, that's what my brain is thinking. And I spend silly amounts of time exploring these intervals on the fretboard, basically. So, does anyone have any questions at this point? Yes?
The geometric approach, does it play into the chromatic lines that you usually do?
Actually, it's really useful for the chromatic lines, yeah. So, did anybody hear that question? Do you want me to? Let me just say what it was. So, what's your name, sorry?
Lucas.
Lucas was asking, does this system of geometrically looking at the guitar help you or play into the chromatic lines that you would play, say as a jazz musician or as a fusion musician? And it really helps, because when you play chromaticism in your lines, if you do it properly in the jazz way, what you're supposed to be doing is targeting chord tones to land on strong beats. And this system allows you to see where those chord tones are really, really quickly and easily. And it allows you to see how you can connect them as well. So again, if I was in C major, if I wanted to find the 3rd, for example, and I wanted to play a little chromatic line running into the 3rd, I can really quickly identify the 3rd is here, because I know that this is 1 and this is 3, which would be there for you at the 5th fret. And then I can play, whatever chromatic line whatever the line would be. If I wanted to play something into the 5th, for example, I can find the 5th really quickly using this system. Whereas there is a risk if you use a larger structure like this. Unless you're very experienced, you might not be able to find the 5th quickly within that shape, because you're visualizing the whole structure. The other problem with these large shapes is that we have this urge when we play these large structures like that C major shape to run up and down them because we practice them like this. So it's not that surprising that when we improvise with them we get it's like, yeah, that's not really improvising, it's just running up and down a shape. Whereas if you can see the intervallic functions and you can see where they are on the fretboard, it's much easier to start to construct melodies out of some of these sounds. So if I had a C major 7 chord, I can play 7, 1, 3, then pull off from the 9 to the 3 to the 9, or the 2 to the 3 to the 2 to the 1. Slide into the 3, up to the 5. Then 1, 7, 3, 5. Let's say the chord then went to B flat major 7. That's kind of common. Again, I can construct melodies based on the fact that I know where the chord tones are and the intervallic functions that I want to play, because I can visualize them really easily on the fretboard outside of a large scale structure. So if I have that melody, sorry.